Matthew here from miniwargaming.com, and it's time for another Sit and Talk. This is the Ask Me Anything show, anything though, where we talk about wargaming or business, or might even get a little personal, like politics or religion. So if you're easily offended by things like talking about religion, please don't watch this show. And as usual, the show will be broken up into two parts, a 45-minute part for free, and then a 30-minute part just for Vault members, which will be at the link below. If you want your questions and comments answered in next week's show, make sure you leave them on this portion, not on the Vault portion, even if you want them answered in the Vault portion, because I take them all from this show. And make sure you thumb up any of the questions you want answered. Now, if you're on YouTube, click the link in the video description below to go leave your comments on our website, because I only pull from those comments. So let us start. Mini Wargaming Chris, MWG Chris, not our actual Mini Wargaming Chris, says, Chris is a god. Can you have him say, "What have you?" into the camera? I would just die.
What have you?
And just for the record, I did double check that account, and it's from a different IP address that's nowhere around here, and the email address is, you know, it's totally possible that Chris could have faked it with using a proxy server and a new email address, but it looks legit, like it's not actually Chris saying that. And honestly, I don't think that he'd put all that effort into doing something just for that. Just for that, yeah. CR Kovar. Hi, Matt. I'm sorry for what might just be the most controversial question to come up in your sit and talks, but this needs to be answered. Is a hamburger a sandwich? What about a hot dog? Is a hamburger a sandwich? Well, what's the definition of a sandwich? Let me open up wonderful Google and type in sandwich. And let's see, let's look up Merriam-Webster's dictionary here. Sandwich dictionary. Sandwich definition, there we go. An item of food consisting of two pieces of bread with meat, cheese, or other filling between them, eaten as a light meal. Here's another one. A sandwich is a food type item consisting of one or more types of food placed on or between slices of bread. Or more generally, any dish wherein two or more pieces of bread serve as the container or wrapper for some other food. And then it gives the nutrition facts for a hamburger. So that right there would make me think that a hamburger is a sandwich, but it is saying bread. Now, would you consider a bun or a roll to be bread? Well, let's look up the definition of bread. Bread definition. Bread, food made of flour, water, and yeast, or another leavening agent mixed together and baked. Well, buns are food made of flour, water, and yeast. Bread is a staple food prepared from a dough of flour and water, usually by baking. Throughout the recorded history, it has been most popular around the world and is one of the oldest artificial foods, having been of importance since the dawn of agriculture. So, a bun falls under the definition of bread, and yeah. So, and then a sandwich says two slices of bread with meat or other stuff in between. So I don't think this is very controversial. I think it's quite obvious. Now, a hot dog, on the other hand, is a little harder because you don't have two buns. Because the definition of a sandwich is that it's two pieces of bread with stuff in between. But a hot dog is technically, like, it depends how you make your hot dog. Like, if you have those really cheap buns where they fall apart, and so you end up having the bun that's broken into two, and then you put the hot dog in the other bun, then technically that's a sandwich. But if you have one of those buns that just kind of opens up, then really you could look at it as a single bun wrapped around that hot dog, in which case it would not be a sandwich. So a hot dog can or cannot be a sandwich, depending on how you treat the bun. The same thing would go for a sub from like Subway or Quiznos or something. Sometimes they cut all the way through the bread, in which case it's a sandwich. If they only cut partially through it, then technically that's all still one piece of bread, and therefore it is no longer a sandwich. And there is your official definition of a sandwich. Okay, Rarix. Who is going to train Steve for the Southern Ontario Open now? Well, as far as I understand, he's not going to continue that series. He's just going to do regular War Machine battle reports. And I don't think he's actually planning on going to the Sioux. He's going to try to keep the War Machine battle reports. Well, he's just going to be changing how they're done, basically. So you'll have to kind of keep an eye on what he does for that. Crunchy when wet. So while you guys are in England, will there be no new videos being uploaded to Mini Wargaming? Maybe someone stays behind to do so? What's going on with that? It's not everybody going to the UK, it's just Dave and I. And so videos are, we make videos ahead of time, all the time. Like all the videos going up this week, were not made this week, except for like the sit and talk. That's different. But all the other ones are made a week, 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks, even 4 weeks in advance. Also, what does everyone at Mini Wargaming smell like? I'm going to decline to comment. Electric Andrew. Bonjour, Matt. Bonjour, Andrew. Andrew. Okay, I know a few people who are Vault members, but we are constantly unable to log into the forums. Our login works fine for all the video content, but we were never able to get into the forum, for instance, when you email us things to go there and answer a question or something. That would be a wonderful question for our support. So send an email to support@miniwargaming.com and they'll hook you up. The forum account is actually separate, but you don't see that when you're looking at your thing, and so if it's not linked and set up properly, then it won't work. So Justin can easily fix that for you, though. Neticus, hey Matt, so each of the Chaos Gods have built a hotel. Which one would you stay at whilst on holiday, and why? Vault member for life, Dan. Well, I kind of want to stay away from the Slanesh one, because who knows what's in there, and hopefully I could go even further with those kind of things. Like, I would question the cleanliness of the place, I guess is what you might say. Nurgle, the same thing. I would kind of not want to eat any of the food. Corn or Zinch would be obviously the most likely candidates. I wouldn't go swimming in any pools in a corn hotel. It's probably just be filled with blood or something disgusting like that. Zinch probably would be the best, but I'm not sure what kind of tricks he would play. But maybe there'd be like, I don't know, probably Zinch, just because it would be the lesser of the 4 evils. Not in general, but just for hotel management skills. Mr. Raziel, hi Matt, I want to ask about the Blood Reaver campaign. I liked how it started, but then I noticed that the mission's results did not matter at all. Well, that's not true, but we'll talk about that in a second. You can clearly see that no matter what was happening in the missions, the main bad boy still appears at the end. And other stuff like Helen getting no penalties for losing her mission in 4B. As a GM, I understand that mission results can mess with a good story, but that's the nature of such games, be it Warhammer campaign or just D&D. If the mission results do not matter, then you can just do a story time and one final mission. But what's the point? This is a very subjective thing to talk about because others might disagree with you. And the way to do a perfect narrative campaign, it does not exist. There are a lot of ways to do it. We could do a narrative campaign where we just set up the setting and then we let the mission results totally dictate where it goes. And that can sometimes produce spectacular results, and sometimes it can produce really dumb results. And then you have the other side of that coin where you totally dictate where everything goes and the missions are just kind of shoehorned into there. Kind of like if you're playing a campaign from a book that Games Workshop supplies, for example. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that the story's already happened and you're just replaying historical events from that story and seeing what kind of results that you got instead. And I don't like that side of the coin either. So we try to find a balance. So what you don't see is all the off-camera stuff happening. For example, Leland and I sit down after a mission and we determine what's going to happen next based on what happened in that mission. There were certain predetermined things that were going to happen in this campaign, but just like a good story, things are sometimes predetermined, and then it's not a question of does that predetermined thing happen, it's a question of the journey along the way. Like for example, if you watch any historical movie that's not 100% based on true story, but it's based around historical times, then you know what's going to happen in the end. Like you're watching Titanic, you know Titanic is going to sink, or you're watching anything in a historical period, and you know already what's going to happen because, well, you know history. But it's not always about what happens in the end. It's also about what develops throughout the thing, and the characters and the stuff that happens. And so I wouldn't say that didn't matter. Most of what happened, like the only prescribed things that I would say happened was like the Blood Reaver appearing and Helen kind of getting to that point. Everything else was definitely influenced by it. The way the Tau and the Grey Knights interacted, that was influenced by the results of the missions. The strength of the different armies, where they're positioned on the planet, was influenced by the way the battle reports went. There was a ton of stuff that was influenced by it. Even the mission where Helen was on the ship and Helen was running away from Cassius, that result really mattered, because if she had won, then Cassius and Anton would have been branded the traitors when she arrived, and then she would have actually come and joined with the Grey Knights, pretending to still be on their side. So that would have happened instead. So where the characters went and where the armies resulted, and what happened to the Tau, all that mattered in the actual battle report. So there were some things that, yeah, it was kind of guided towards that, but that was to try to help the overall story arc still happen. So I can see why you'd want every little thing to matter, and maybe that's good, but maybe it's not. Because we've gone, let me just put it this way, we've gone through various iterations. Different campaigns have had more forced story than others, and to be honest, I haven't seen a difference in the number of constructive complaints or constructive criticisms, whether we have one that's more open or less open. Everybody has their favorites, and when it comes to narrative, just like a TV show, everybody's going to have their opinion on how the story should go, or where it should, like just how it should be done in the beginning, and how it should work. And so what you're saying is true, and it's also not true. And what others are saying is true and also not true. I'm not going to be the perfect person to make narrative campaigns, and so I'm going to make mistakes. But was that a mistake? I don't know. I'm trying to take what everybody's saying and how people are reacting, but I'm also trying to ignore some of the comments and just look at how many people are watching them and which campaigns tend to get the most views and the most vault signups. And that tells me if I'm developing a compelling story and people are signing up to the vault to see what happens, then regardless of what people are saying, I have to look at what they're doing. And that kind of gives me some hints as to which missions were more popular, which campaigns had a better story or just a better structure to them. And I'm constantly trying to evolve that and make it better. So it's tough. It's a hard one to do, because there's no way I could actually do a perfect campaign, which I can't do. But let's say I did, and there would still be people at the end with their criticisms of thinking that it could have been better if, or could have been better if. And that's just the way it is. It's all subjective. It's all, in this case, it's bordering like more artistic than more logical. It's just like how you feel about it and perceptions and everything else. So who knows? Who knows what the best way to do it is? But I'm constantly trying to get better at them. So we'll kind of see where we go from there. Rezio Bro. Hi, Matt. Just want to inform you that a third philosophy exists in the wargaming universe. Whenever my brother, future sister-in-law, and I come across a 40k rule we are unsure of, we take your word on the matter as law. I decree we are therefore Team Ram, rules according to Matt. Ironically, as our herald, you yourself can never become a member of the Team Ram, or you would surely succumb to the ways of chaos. Yeah, I can't join a team that rules according to Matt, because who would I be referring to when I'm looking up the rules? So I get it. So Team Ram, are you saying I should make a shirt for that? Team Ram, rules according to Matt. Wilhelm Screamer. Matt, if you guys ever do more X-Wing or Armada bat reps, please use wipe cuts. You can't have Star Wars without wipe cuts. Every clip, every 3 seconds, there should be a wipe cut. Wipe, wipe, wipe. That would be awful. James Laws. Hi, Matt. In response to the complaint about recurring topics, I have a few questions I don't believe I've ever seen answered. Been watching for about a year now. Do you care about global warming? Do you ever consider the environmental implications of your business? Do I care about global warming? Yes. I care about let me put it this way. I care about the environment. Am I sold on the fact of this whole global warming thing? I don't know. I honestly haven't. I know that most people jump to conclusions way before they have anywhere the right amount of information. So I realize that I am far from having enough information to actually have a really solid opinion on global warming. I do have a solid opinion that we should take care of the environment. So whatever we find to be better to do that, we should definitely do. Now, the environmental implications for our business, there's very little that we do that would have a bad impact on the environment. Like, obviously, we create waste with, leftover plastics and the paper that we use in the office. So we do our best to recycle and things like that. But there's not a lot of other waste that we have control over, nor do we do like huge CO2 emissions or anything. We're not a factory producing miniatures. So there's very little that we do that actually has an impact on the environment beyond what just normally happens in a day-to-day operation with each person, such as driving vehicles and having the lights on and the power that draws and all of that. So yeah. What do you think of security guards? I think that they're fine. I'm trying to figure out, would somebody have a problem with the idea of security guards? I think we need them, just like we need police forces and everything else. Aside from your previous business, where else have you worked? Well, my first job was working for my father, and he has a construction company, so I was a grunt laborer. Sorry, it was called general laborer, but really it was a grunt laborer. I did everything nobody else wanted to do, which was, cleaning up. Well, I helped with the construction as well. I enjoyed that, but I was also the gopher, the guy. I drove the truck, pick up materials, and take garbage to the dump, and all that kind of stuff. So I worked in construction with my dad for a few summers, I should say. And then after I came home from Tahiti, being a missionary, I worked at Canadian Tire roadside assistance for a few years, bilingual support there, helping people who, it's roadside assistance, like CAA or AAA, that kind of idea. And then I started my own businesses, and from then on I've been self-employed. So not a ton of previous work experience, like not a lot of different jobs, just basically 2 different jobs. Working for my dad and working for Canadian Tire. Do you like city building video games? I do. I don't currently play any. I know there's like SimCity. I remember an older game. Oh, it was a Rome-based one. What was it called? It was like quite a while ago. Like a long time ago. And you built... I only ever played the free version of it. But you built a city, and you traded with other cities, and in the full version you could fight and protect cities as well, but this one I just played the free one for a while. Thanks, keep up the great work. Well, thank you. Okay. Wraithlin. Hi Matt, what I especially like about your bat reps is how meticulous you are about getting rules and synergies right while keeping fair and calm. Don't you think there can be games in an enjoyable atmosphere when both players agree on maxed out tournament lists? I'd like to see that from time to time as a sort of counterweight to the awesome and fluffy narrative campaigns. Oh yeah, I've said this countless times. It's not how strong your army is, it's how strong it is compared to your opponents. So if you have a very strong army and your opponent has a weak army, it's not going to be fun, and vice versa. And so we always try. And so if somebody wants to do a super awesome tournament list, that can be fun if the other person's prepared for it. And so they're like, okay, well, I'll bring a super awesome tournament list too, and we'll see who can win, and we can learn from that experience. So yeah, totally. Yeah, that can be fun too. It's about balance in an unbalanced game, and the way that you basically have to balance it yourself. And if you know that you're playing Necrons and you're going up against Tyranids, for example, then you may not want to bring a maxed out or min-maxed Decurion detachment against them, because then it just wouldn't be that fun. That kind of stuff. Lord Crago, hi Matt, hope all is well with family and health. 2 quick questions. 1, have you ever seen the Ultramarines movie, and what is your opinion on it? I tried watching it. It was awful. Just absolutely awful. Just horrible. The CG, it's worse than like amateur stuff. It was just bad. Just bad. So I couldn't watch the whole thing. I just couldn't. I just didn't care. It was just so bad. 2, if you could close down your YouTube channel and earn enough money from the vault alone to sustain all your staff in the studio, would you? No. Well, that's kind of a cyclical question. The reason the vault grows is because of YouTube. That's like cutting off all your advertising. That's like saying this to a business owner: if you could not advertise and still make money, would you? And well, yeah, of course, because then we can save all the money that we're putting in advertising. And we technically put tons of money into advertising, because half of what we do is making videos for advertising, because the free stuff is essentially advertising for the vault, without being like just an ad. It's it's content. So would I do that if, let's say that I could, okay, let's answer your question in a different way, in a hypothetical way. Let's say that we could sustain the growth in the vault without putting YouTube videos up. Would I want to do that? Well, from a monetary point of view, yes, because obviously it would cut a ton of our costs, and we'd also be able to make the vault even better, because we could put even more videos into it, but we'd still have to pay for advertising. So this is the thing. I'm trying to like separate myself from that. Assume that people just somehow stumble across us just by word of mouth, and therefore we're not paying any advertising. Then yeah, sure, for a monetary point, but it is also fun to have a YouTube channel, because it gets more views, because there's obviously more people who watch your videos for free than there are vault members, and so there's that too. But it's just become such a part of our business that it's an integral part of our business. The YouTube, we wouldn't have the vault if it wasn't for YouTube. Let me just put it that way. That it's what allows us to, like, we don't run advertising campaigns in the traditional sense. We don't run banner ads. Like, we've tried that in the past. We don't run banner ads. We don't get sponsored stuff done for us. The way we advertise our business is simply through social marketing and social engagement, and that is by putting up videos for free. And then we have other channels that help a little bit too, like our Facebook page, Twitter account, and our website, some search engine optimization and all that. But the bulk of it comes because we've built up a viewership on YouTube. And so if it wasn't for YouTube, this type of business wouldn't be able to exist the same way that it has. So removing the thing that's kind of the cornerstone of the business and saying, would you do it without it? It's like, well, I'd have to do it somehow. And so this way works really well. As a mini wargaming fan on YouTube, I hope you never solely focus on the vault, as I love the free content. Let me tell you, we're always pretty much solely focused on the vault. Let me just make that clear. Our goal is to get as many people into the mini wargaming vault as possible. Everything we do revolves around that. And so I've kind of explained why. It would answer the question, well, why do you put stuff out for free then if you want everybody in the vault? It's because that is our advertising. That grows a viewership who like our content, and then we say, well, we have even more of it over here, and then some of them will sign up. And so saying that it's not that we're focusing on YouTube on one hand and focusing on the vault on the other. We're not. We're focusing on the vault. It's about getting people in there to be paid subscribers so that we can make more money and grow our business and make more videos. But in order to do that, we have to also put out videos for free. Fluff matters. Hey Matt, first off, thank you to everyone at Mini Wargaming for producing such amazing content. You're welcome, and thank you for the compliment. Do you think 40K should allow you to take cover saves and armor saves? This would mimic the chance of range shots being intercepted by cover, such as ruins, before impacting on the armor of the model. It's definitely more tactical that way. The whole game would have to be adjusted accordingly, because right now you have 3 different kinds of saves, and you can only take the best one. And you're right, that doesn't make any sense, because what happens is you get 2+ Terminator armor, and unless they're up against a lot of AP2 or AP1 weapons, they don't care about cover. But in real life, and like who cares about that for most of the part, but like think about it for a second, you stick a guy in Terminator armor behind an Aegis defense line, and that 2+ armor is going to be, he's going to be even more defended and more well protected, because now half of the shots at him are going to deflect off the defense line, and then the other half will get through, and then his armor will deflect it. So to answer your question, I do like the idea of cover providing an extra mechanism for it. We get that in games like War Machine and Infinity. War Machine does it so that it's harder to hit somebody who's behind cover. But they're a 2d6 base game. And Infinity is a d20 game. Infinity actually makes it harder to hit the person when they're behind cover, and it increases their armor when you're behind cover. But they're a d20 base game. And so the huge difference between that and 40K is a simple d6 base game. Everything is based on d6, except like leadership tests. Any type of leadership test is a 2d6. It's more scaled that way. So what the problem is with a d6 based game, it's also its strength because it allows you to play it quickly, but the problem is that you don't have much granularity. And so this is why you see Space Marines die to las guns, and whereas when you read it in books, they don't quickly die to las guns. It takes a lot of las gun fire to take down one Space Marine. It's because when you only have a level of stats around 6, like you go from 4+ to 3+, it's a big jump. 3+ to 2+ is a big jump. But when you're playing War Machine and you're rolling 2d6 and you go from needing a 10 to hit to a 9 to hit, it's a nice increase, but it's not as drastic as going from one number to another in a d6. Or in a d20 base game, going from one number to another number, like 18 to 17, is only a 10% difference. It adds 10% to the percentage chance of success. Whereas when you're going from 5 to 4, you're adding a 15% chance, 15-point-something% chance of adding to success. And so there's a bigger jump. There's less granularity there. So like when I say a 4+ armor save or a 3+ armor save, that's a big difference. Whereas in Infinity, if I say they have a 3 armor or a 4 armor, that's a difference, but it's not as drastic. And so that's why it would be hard to allow for both cover and armor. Because if you allow both the saves, like if you make your cover save, and then if you fail those, you make your armor save, kind of like how Feel No Pain works right now, this is the second save, then you see what happens. Any army that uses Feel No Pain typically just survives too long on the table. And when you're playing a game like 40K where you have a lot of models on the table, that's cumbersome. You want things to die quickly to make the game more interesting. And so, yes, I think they should have, when they designed the game, made cover and armor and invuln saves all work together somehow. But with the current way the rules stand, it would take a huge rebalancing of every single army if they all of a sudden had you roll more than one. And but it would make the game more tactical, because all of a sudden, no matter what your armor save is, cover's good, unless somebody's got an ignore cover or ignore cover weapon. But that's different. That can exist too. So it's always good to have cover, which makes all of a sudden your terrain useful for every army, not just the armies with low armor saves. Because most Marine or Grey Knights armies or Dark Angel Terminator armies, they're going to care less about terrain. And that's just too bad, because I think the terrain adds a huge tactical element to the game. J. Petrie, 1973. Hello, Matt. Just wanted to thank all of you at miniwargaming.com. My fiance and I spend our weekends watching you guys while painting. I can't say how many times we've watched and laughed at the Life of a Wargamer series. My question for you is, will anyone from Mini Wargaming be going to attend Origins Gaming Convention in Columbus, Ohio? Not that I'm aware of. We don't do much convention attending at all, really. Thank you again for all you do at Mini Wargaming, Jason, Thursday Gaming Group. Thank you. Sparius 1. Hey Matt, about Tyranid allies, they should totally be able to ally with Necrons. Necrons would be able to scour the galaxy, killing all life forms, then devouring their biomass. As you've said in the past, there's always a way to fluff an explanation. The problem is the Necrons don't want to destroy all the biomass in the galaxy, because they want to find a way to reverse the biotransference that happened to them when they went from being Necron tier to Necrons. Basically, when Catan Deceiver tricked them into giving up their bodies so that all the Catan could feed on their bodies, and then they lost all their souls, that they're actually working on a way to reverse that process. This is why the Necrons would work with the Blood Angels and that whole bro-fisting thing everybody makes fun of. It makes total sense, actually, because if the Tyranids wiped out all the bodies, then the Necrons wouldn't be able to have anything to biotransfer back into, because that's one of the ways that they might be able to do it. Rather than building new bodies, they could just find a race that maybe is adaptable or compatible, and be able to transfer their souls back into those bodies. Reverse biotransference, if you will. So no, they wouldn't want to work with Tyranids for that very reason. They want the biomass that's on all these planets, because once they are transferred back into bodies, well, then they need to eat and have plants and stuff. So unfortunately, the Tyranids, for the most part, won't really be able to have allies. You can still explain some temporary alliances where maybe somebody's manipulating the Tyranids, trying to change their path so that they'll take out an enemy, and that might be something that kind of thing could happen. But a direct alliance between the two where they actually cooperate is very, very unlikely. Mr. TTTs. Hey Matt, I have a question concerning the Adeptus Mechanicum. While watching last week's Sit and Talk, I have built an Astra Militarum army with Adeptus Mechanicum allies. This brings me to my questions. 1. You already briefly talked about the topic in the AdMech review videos of filling these weak gaps of the AdMech with allies. I'm asking myself, what gaps of other armies of the Imperium could be filled with AdMech allies? Well, basically anything the AdMech are good at doing, you could stick them as allies to do that. Now, a lot of armies will have their ways to handle it, but I think they make great allies for the Imperial Guard for a couple of reasons. One, because they can jump in their transports, and another reason because they have access to some weaponry that's kind of unique to them, like haywire guns, or those walkers, the dragoons with their snipers that are radium. They're radium Jezzails. Those are really cool too. So there's some things that they'd be really good at, or using the Onager Dune Walkers, Dune Crawlers. I always call them Dune Walkers. They're Dune Crawlers as an anti-aircraft platform, because the Imperial Guard don't have a lot of anti-air. Like, they do have access to some, don't get me wrong, and they have their own flyers, but it's just nice to be able to have something that could kind of give that anti-air support as well. So really, you can mix and match them however you want, whatever weaknesses you feel, anything that you feel your army is lacking in being able to accomplish, then you could ally with that. So it's also about fluff. You could ally with them just because it's cool, and you want to do that. Tournaments, you'll typically get the min-maxing kind of alliances where, you know, your army can handle this, but that army can do it better. So we find a minimum way to include that into your army. It still allows you to be able to buy everything else that you want. 2. How big will the AdMech Studio army be? Narrative campaign size or only battle report suitable? I think we've got about 1,000 plus points right now. More? How many points are we at? 1,500.
Special weapons and upgrades and whatnot. I think we're easily at 1,500.
So we're at 1,500 right now, and we haven't even received the Onager Dune crawlers, and then right, because with the current AdMech codex, it would be hard to build a really big army, because all you'd be doing is just duplicating. It's just more of the same stuff, and that's kind of boring. And so I would suspect, because we are doing a narrative campaign soon that will involve the AdMech, that you're going to see between 2,000 and 3,000 points of them, and then allied with other Imperium. And then there are rumors, of course, of another AdMech codex coming out in the next 2 or 3 months, and so that'll increase the size of it as well. So it's not a complete army, really. It's lacking a lot of elements to really be called a complete army. So it's more like the Militarum Tempestus kind of idea, where it's a support army. And so you're going to see that in the campaign, where they'll ally with lots of Imperium. Okay. Just trying to find one. Here we go. Bash 1016. Hey Matt, that last comment was a great one. I really enjoyed the part where you answered it with words and pushed your glasses up on your nose. I do need to get them tightened, just like the one person said. Well done. Now on to my comment. Last night I had a dream that I made a chance visit to Mini Wargaming. When I went to open my case, I had left all my painted minis at home. Everyone laughed at me except Chris. He just stared with an evil stare that made me uncomfortable. Then he went and grabbed lunch, but you came back and told me lunch is for people who bring their painted minis. And all ate and laughed without me. Oh. Then I left. What I have learned is that when I plan a trip up there, hopefully sometime next year, I will triple check to make sure I have all my painted minis. How did you know that's what we did? Thanks, and now on to a comment people will really enjoy. And there's something else after that, so maybe you need somebody else's comment. If we wouldn't do that, just for the record, we would let you borrow our miniatures. Unless you're playing an army that we don't have, but we have pretty much every army, so that shouldn't be a problem. But Chris would probably stare at you with an evil stare, but he'll do that anyways. Okay. Big Red Ouse. Hey Matt, so all this talk on the new job position has got me wondering, have you put any thought into opening a satellite studio? Didn't somebody ask me this last week? I think somebody asked me this last week. And I said that, yes, of course I've thought of that, but it really increases costs. So eventually that might happen. But right now we're still able to kind of grow within the area that we are at. We have no idea how big a company Mini Wargaming is able to become. I know what kind of size company I want it to become, but there's still the size of the market and our own limitations and growth. So opening up satellite locations, you have to be careful because there's certain stages in your business when you're growing that during your growth, certain times of growth will actually lower your profits. A really easy example of that is if, let's say you're a one-man operation working from home, doing whatever. Let's say you're doing a painting service, because that's nice and easy to understand. You work from home, and you have your clients, and but you get to the point, so you're growing your business, you get more and more clients. At first you're doing very little painting per week because you're doing more searching for clients, and then as you get more clients, you get to the point where more of your time is spent painting, so you're making money by doing that. Hopefully, assume that you know how, like, you paint for the prices work. And so what happens is your profits are going higher and higher and higher, but your costs are staying relatively the same because you're working from home. Like you have to pay your bills whether you make money or not. And so you have a fixed overhead. And the amount of money that you make is just based on how much money the business makes. Well, you get to the point where you're working so much and you have so many clients that you're like, oh, I need to expand. And so you're like, well, I'll hire a second person. Now let's assume that you hire that person to work in your home. So you're not increasing the overhead of your the building. But you still, as soon as you bring in somebody else, let's say they're just making, well, it doesn't even matter what they're making. Instantly, whatever they're making comes out of your profits. You've had zero growth at the point that you hire them, but you lose that much in profits. And then what you're hoping is that by having this extra person, you'll be able to take on more clients. And so then as you get more and more clients, then you start to make up for that person's wages, and then you totally make up for their wages, and then you go beyond it, and then you start to become more and more profitable again. So if you look at the line, it drops when you hire more people or open a new location or anything else. And then you're hoping that, of course, the end result will be that it'll raise higher than it could have before. And so when we have an existing location, hiring an extra person is just a small drop in that in the profits. But opening a new location adds a ton of extra expenses in equipment, in the lease, in the overhead, the utilities, and then people, of course. And so you'd have to make a lot of extra money to make up for all that extra expense. And so it would take a while. And so all I'm trying to say is it's not necessarily a bad idea, because eventually you need to take those changes. You need to, unless you want to stay a one-man operation forever working in your home, you need to eventually lose a bit of money in the short term to grow. But at the same time, you need to make the decisions that'll get you the most return on your investment as quickly as possible. And then maybe eventually we can no longer get them that much of a return for just hiring more people to work here, and we need to open in a new location to find new players, new talent, or whatever else that we need to do. And that'll be a big expense, but hopefully by then we'll be making enough money that big expense won't hurt us or won't really threaten the business. It'll just be a temporary investment that then turns into more profit. So yes, I've thought about it a lot, but we're nowhere near the point where we'd be ready to do that. At least I don't think so. And as soon as you open in a different country, you add a ton of expenses, because all of a sudden you got to double up on accountants and bookkeepers and lawyers, all that stuff. Whereas we just open in another city in the same country, or at least in the same province, then it's not that much extra expense for your bookkeepers and accountants and stuff, because it's just the payroll. They just do a couple more paychecks, and there's a couple more utility bills to pay, that kind of stuff. That's not too hard. All right. Wolf toenail. Wolf toenail. That's really hard to say. Wolf toenail. Oh, there we go. It's because you capitalized the N. You made me parse it differently. A wolf's toenail. New vault member here. Absolutely loving it. Seriously can't believe it has taken me this long to become one. Well, thank you. On another note, just watched Dave's video to Den of Imagination and think it's really refreshing to see an honest and open apology for an understandable mistake. He's a credit to the company, and I can see what a good bunch of humans you all are. Vault member until the zombies come. Yeah, we felt pretty bad. For those of you who don't know, what happened is Dave just posted up a picture of some space wolves that were painted by Den of Imagination, but he credited a different company. And obviously that's not right. But it was a mistake, because we've worked with so many companies over the past year that sometimes it happens. Sometimes we forget who painted some things. And so then he put up a video explaining that, to kind of rectifying that, getting them some advertising too. Electric Andre. Hola, Matt. Oh, we're Spanish now. Does Mini Wargaming have a Baneblade or a Baneblade variant? And if so, can I come out and play sometime? Yeah, we have several Baneblades. I'm personally a fan of the Hellhammer variant, and I would love to see it lay waste to all before it. I don't know exactly the variants that we have, but we have three Baneblades, I think, of different variations. Neo Navy. Arg, laptop, split my comment. Either way, straight to the question. How would you fix the morale system in 40k? Usually rules like fear, pinning, and forcing fallback moves seem to be subpar, if not useless, due to so many units ignoring it. I think they've done a good job of making it more useful. They've, back when I started playing 40k, there was a lot more fearless on the table. At least it seemed to be that way. And they've removed a lot of that fearless. I still think there is a little too much fearless, or things like the demons just totally ignoring all those rules. Like, I know fluff-wise it might make sense, oh, they're not going to be afraid. But you can explain it in different ways other than just like a fear. It could be also like an awe or a distraction or whatever happens to be. And so, but I do find that the most enjoyable games are usually between two armies who are not fearless and who are not just blanket leadership 10. Because then you do get to try to pin them and force fallback moves. Like I found I played a Space Marine versus Tau game, and I was totally outmatched army-wise, but I got lucky and made his broadsides fall back right off the table and something else fall back off the table too. And then I was able to, and then if I played Tyranids, for example, bringing Broodlords with their automatic, the Horror, which forces a pinning check at -2 leadership, that's useful. That's really useful. And unless the army's fearless, in which case it's totally useless. And so just having that aspect, I think the morale system in any game is very important, because it creates a different level of tactics, things that you can exploit to try to win the game. So I think for the most part, it works. There's a little too many things but even like Space Marines, and they shall know no fear, that ignores fear, but it doesn't ignore pinning. They still fall back. They just get to automatically regroup. Sometimes that works in their favor, and sometimes it doesn't. And so I think for the most part it's okay. The Necrons being blanket leadership 10, I really think that's dumb. I think Necron Warrior should be leadership 7. And you can say whatever you want about them being robots, but you know, they still have programming to just try to stay alive. And so that can kind of be the explanation of it. So if you say, well, they're robots, so they should they should have leadership 10, well, then why don't you just make them fearless? And then why Space Marines, who are these superhuman genetically modified things, only have a leadership of 8? And they can still fall back. Like, it's just, it doesn't match up. So I think Necrons need leadership 7 on their warriors, leadership 8 on their immortals, leadership 9 on their Lich Guard and their Cryptex, and then leadership 10 on their lords and overlords. I think that would be a really good way to do it. And it would also, I think it would actually help a lot of the balance issues that we see with the Necrons. Yes, they would still be super resilient, but at least you'd have one more way to deal with them, to pin them with a pinning weapon. Because you can still deal a wound with a pinning weapon. It's not like you never kill them, it's just you don't kill them very quickly. But if you could pin a squad, all of a sudden, no matter how strong it is, it's become very, very weak. It can't fire very well, it can't move, it can't charge, it can't run, it's stuck. And that gives you a chance to kind of outmaneuver them. And that's kind of what you need. But because they're blanket leadership 10, it's not likely that you're going to pin them or make them feel fear or make them fall back. The only time where it really comes into account is when you're in close combat and you beat them enough, which is still hard to do because they're so resilient, that you drop their leadership down far enough. So I think for sure, I would fix Necron's morale. Just the numbers that I gave right there. Leadership 7 for warriors, 8, and anything that's warrior equivalent, like Tomb Blades, because they're basically just warriors on bikes. Leadership 8 for immortals, leadership 9 for your Lich Guard, and Cryptex perhaps. And that way it gives you another reason to join your Cryptex to units. It doesn't just give them the bonus to their reanimation protocol, but also gives them extra leadership. I feel that would add a huge amount of flavor to them, just an enormous amount of flavor. And this is coming from a Necron player. I want my army to have worse leadership. It's just, and the other reason I want it to have worse leadership is because I'm annoyed whenever I fail a leadership 10. And it happens way too often. I roll an 11 or a 12 and I'm like, come on, leadership 10 should be better than that, and they just fail it way too often. So if I fail leadership 7, then it's like, okay, well, that's just leadership 7, so I expect to fail it. So it doesn't hurt as much. But I totally would want them to nerf in those areas. And then, of course, some of the other ones, they're going to be various. But because like your Canoptech Wraiths, they should be leadership 8 or 9, but they're fearless anyways. All your Canoptech stuff is fearless, and that's fine. They're the true robots of the Necrons. And then, yeah, I think that would really make a big difference. So it's not so much fixing the morale system, it's fixing the way the armies interact with it. That would really do it. And I think they've done a good job of making it better, but it still has a ways to go. Elegant Egotist. Hey Matt, great vid. One thing I've noticed with 40k is a lot of armies have massively strong lists, like demons summoning more demons or the orcs lucky stick mega armor combo. Most people don't play them as it's cheesed out, but with a new codex it's becoming more powerful, Necrons. Do you think Games Workshop are making the game so you have to take the super strong stuff? Thanks and keep up the great work. I think Games Workshop makes the game in such a way that people want to buy more models. And so I don't know if it's necessarily like they're trying to create these Death Star stuff, but it's more like, hey, we don't sell hardly any Tomb Blades, so let's make them a prerequisite of the curing detachment, and actually it'll make them really good. Oh, we're not selling very many Lich Guard or Praetorians because they're too expensive and useless, so let's buff them and drop their points cost. Oh, now everybody wants to buy them. I think they do those kind of decisions totally, because it might not be like direct like that as the game designer's creating it, but it is definitely got to be influenced by that. And I think that that's a good decision. If they see, it's kind of like, I watch StarCraft battle reports, and they occasionally change, like throughout the kind of the lifetime of StarCraft, Blizzard has changed how units work. It's never been a matter of, or it sometimes is a matter of balancing, but often it's just a matter of getting people to use stuff that they don't usually use. So if they see that a certain unit is never used, they give it a buff. Did it need that buff? Not necessarily, because maybe if people just learned how to use it, they would. But because Blizzard wants people to have fun with the game and have as much variety as they can, they'll nerf something that people always use, even if it's not overpowered, it's just useful, and they'll buff something else that is not as useful. Now the difference between StarCraft and Warhammer is that, of course, when they buff or nerf something in StarCraft, you don't have to make any purchases, but in Warhammer you do. So people might get a little upset when the army that they've created from a previous codex all of a sudden becomes not as good and they've got to purchase all these new models. And so there is the monetary difference there. But in the end, I still think it's a good thing because, for one thing, it makes them more money. And that's what we want Games Workshop to make more money, so they keep making models and games. And so the industry stays around. But also because it forces people to change what they're doing. Because let's face it, if people were still playing the same list that they were playing 5 or 10 years ago, that would be boring. We want new lists. When the new Tyranid Codex came out, I was very disappointed in it. But I liked that I played, now play the Tyranids different than I used to. It gave me a change, even if the Codex update was kind of poorly done. It at least changed the way the game played for Tyranids, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. Every new supplement that comes out with new formations or detachments or new special equipment or anything, I enjoy that kind of stuff, whether it's overpowered or not, because it gives you a different way to play. So to answer your question, yes, I think they do that, so you have to buy new stuff. And so I think it does factor into those decisions. But I also think that that's not a bad thing, except for your wallet. Thanks for watching. And go ahead and click the link below to watch the next 30 minutes in the Vault, in the Sit and Vault show, where I'll now continue to answer questions only by Vault members. Thanks for watching, and happy wargaming.